Welcome to the deep dive. I want you to think about what happens when you open up your laptop, boot up a coding environment, or ask an AI to summarize some massive PDF for work.
Right, it just sort of happens.
Exactly. There's this illusion of like absolute weightlessness, right? It all just feels like magic happening out there in the cloud.
For sure.
We rarely stop to think about the physical servers or the massive corporate bank accounts or the very real geopolitical borders that actually make that magic possible.
Yeah, because it's designed to feel invisible to you.
Right. But today, we're looking at a single 24-hour window where that illusion was just completely shattered. We are on a mission today to decode a massive overnight shift in the global balance of artificial intelligence power.
And remarkably, it really did all unfold in just one single news cycle.
It did. And look, if you use these tools every single day for work or research or coding, you really need to understand this because the very infrastructure you rely on is, well, it's currently caught in a high-stakes international tug-of-war.
It really is a fascinating moment in tech history.
Right.
I mean, we're looking at a landscape where the underlying, often invisible mechanics of power, both corporate and governmental, are being dragged right out into the open for everyone to see.
Yeah.
The infrastructure isn't just code anymore. It's diplomacy, it's national security, and it's economics.
Absolutely. So to make sense of exactly how we got here, we're using Aaron Rose's latest Tech Reader AI Digest for Tuesday, June 16th, 2026. Rose has essentially handed us a map of 3 interconnected seismic events.
A really heavy news day.
Oh, incredibly heavy. We're looking at an eye-watering $60 billion corporate buyout, a sudden U.S. government intervention that effectively put a major AI in the dark, and a massive global rebellion pushing for a completely new paradigm called sovereign AI.
It's basically a perfect storm. We have private corporate wealth colliding directly with state regulatory power, and then the international community reacting to that collision in real time.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because starting with the corporate side of the equation, before we even get to governments trying to rein tech companies in, we have to talk about the immense, almost incomprehensible financial power these private U.S. tech companies wield right now.
Right. The scale is just staggering.
Staggering. According to the Digest, SpaceX just officially acquired AnySphere. And for those who don't know, they're the makers of the really popular AI coding tool, Cursor.
Yep.
And the price tag for this acquisition, $60 billion.
Wow.
Yeah. But I need you to explain the mechanics of this to me because the timeline is just breaking my brain. SpaceX exercised their call option to buy Cursor just 2 trading days after their own IPO.
Right.
2 days. How is that structurally possible?
What's fascinating here is the financial engineering behind the move. You really have to look at how they structured this deal months in advance.
Okay.
So, back in April, SpaceX secured a call option, which is essentially a legally binding right to purchase Cursor at a predetermined valuation, regardless of what happens in the market later.
Right, like locking in a price.
Exactly. And they attached a massive $1.5 billion termination fee if they backed out. But, SpaceX knew their own IPO was coming.
So they were basically betting on themselves.
Exactly. When they finally went public, their stock surged, closing at $201 a share. And that immediately pushed SpaceX's overall market cap to over $2.5 trillion.
$2.5 trillion. So wait, they didn't just hand over $60 billion in cash then?
No, not at all.
They used their freshly inflated public stock as the currency.
Precisely. In an all-stock deal, when a company hits a $2.5 trillion market cap, their stock becomes this incredibly powerful, almost limitless currency.
That is wild.
Yeah, they use that post-IPO purchasing power to basically swallow Cursor whole. By doing that, they avoided that $1.5 billion penalty and instantly absorbed a massive asset without draining their actual cash reserves.
And it's not like Cursor is some small-time startup either. I mean, the Digest notes they're generating $2.6 billion in annualized enterprise revenue.
It's a massive operation.
Right. Before this SpaceX deal closed, Cursor was actually on track to raise a $2 billion funding round of their own at a $50 billion valuation.
Which is huge.
Yeah. And we know from Rose's reporting that SpaceX's AI arm, SpaceX AI, has been jointly training a model with Cursor for months using the Colossus supercomputer.
Right.
And that new model is about to ship inside Cursor and inside Grok build.
Which tells us exactly what the broader strategy is here. I mean, the stated goal is to close the gap with Anthropic and OpenAI, specifically in the realm of coding tools.
Okay, That makes sense.
Yeah, so by bringing Cursor completely in-house, SpaceX isn't just buying a brand. They're buying $2.6 billion in locked-in enterprise revenue and a model that's already deeply baked into their own Colossus infrastructure.
But hold on, I was looking at the underlying spending data Rose provided from Ramp, and it paints a really contradictory picture.
Oh, the market share data.
Yeah. Cursor's market share among AI coding tools actually dropped. It went from 41% in June of 2025 down to 26% in May 2026.
It did.
So it sounds like SpaceX just bought a $60 billion mansion, but the foundation is cracking. Are they vastly overpaying for a shrinking user base just so they can get their hands on that enterprise revenue?
That is a great way to put it.
Huh.
But to, stretch your analogy even further, SpaceX doesn't actually care about the foundation or the curb appeal or the retail user base of that mansion.
They don't.
No. They bought it to strip the copper wiring out of the walls.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, dropping from 41 to 26% market share in 12 months is definitively not a sign of dominant product momentum. Aaron Rose analyzes this contradiction perfectly.
What does he say?
He points out that SpaceX is clearly buying an established enterprise baseline and existing infrastructure, not a rocket ship growth curve.
Yeah.
They're buying the underlying mechanics to plug directly into Grok.
So the true test of whether this was a brilliant $60 billion strategic move or just a massive ego-driven overpay, that comes down to the integration phase.
It's exactly. Rose notes that reversing this sliding market share depends entirely on how well SpaceX can integrate Cursor into Grok build before their November earnings report.
So they're on the clock.
Very much so. They have to prove to the market that the combined ecosystem is stickier, more efficient, and just more powerful than Cursor was on its own.
It's a staggering gamble, but it also highlights the sheer scale of what private companies are capable of right now. I mean, SpaceX can throw around $60 billion in stock like it's pocket change.
Right.
But as we transition to the second major event in the digest, we see a harsh reality check. SpaceX might have the financial power to buy a company with a pen stroke. But as we're seeing in Washington right now, all that private wealth means absolutely nothing when the federal government decides to pull the plug.
Which brings us to the Anthropic shutdown.
Yeah.
This is the moment where the narrative dramatically shifts from market dynamics to national security.
Exactly. Right now, as we're speaking, Anthropic's top-tier models, Fable 5 and Mythos 5, are completely offline.
It's just totally dark.
A massive compliance scramble is unfolding. Anthropic's senior technical engineers are currently sitting in Washington, D.C., in active, in-person negotiations with the Commerce Department.
Wow.
Yeah, they're trying to figure out a technical remediation path to get the models back online. And it's incredibly serious. I mean, National Cyber Director Sean Cairncross is part of the government's delegation.
That tells you how high up this goes.
Exactly. But what makes this so surreal is the split-screen reality of it all. While the engineers are sweating it out in D.C., Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick and Anthropic CEO Dario Amodei are both attending the G7 summit in Evian-les-Bains, France.
It's an incredible piece of geopolitical theater.
Isn't it?
You have the CEO and the regulator at a resort in France, alongside every other heavy hitter. Sam Altman from OpenAI, Demis Hassabis from Google, Alexander Wang from Meta.
The whole crew.
Yeah, they're acting as global ambassadors for a transformative technology on the world stage. While back home, their core infrastructure is essentially locked down by a domestic regulatory hammer.
And the chaos this is causing for everyday consumers and developers is immense. The digest details how refunds are actively being issued for users.
Right, the June 9th to 14th subscribers.
Yeah, and if you're an Apple App Store user, you can't even go through Anthropic. You have to deal with Apple's support channel directly. All of this is happening with a massive introductory pricing deadline looming.
June 22nd.
Right. Now, you mentioned a dual-track nightmare earlier when we were looking at the notes. Unpack that mechanism for me. How does a company actually handle this?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the dual-track nightmare Aaron Rose describes is the sheer friction between commercial reality and federal compliance.
Okay.
Track 1 is the business side. You have strict, unforgiving commercial deadlines, consumer trust plummeting, refund cutoffs, and pricing shifts.
The day-to-day survival.
Right. Track 2 is the national security side, a complex, opaque, and highly classified technical compliance process with the Commerce Department.
And those don't move at the same speed.
Exactly. These two tracks operate at completely different speeds. A tech company wants to push an update and solve the problem overnight. The federal government moves at the speed of bureaucracy and security audits.
Right.
Resolving this depends entirely on the Washington engineers proving they can lock down the models, regardless of how close the CEO and the Commerce Secretary are sitting to each other at a G7 working lunch.
And we should clarify exactly why the government pulled the plug. The Digest reports that Commerce Secretary Lutnick's letter cited specific national security concerns regarding the diversion of these frontier models to military and intelligence users in China and Russia.
Right, that was the stated reason.
Now, it's a highly contested narrative right now. David Sachs claims the administration actually offered Amodei a choice regarding technical remediation before issuing the directive.
And Anthropic officially denies that claim.
Right. And without endorsing either side, the ultimate reality on the ground remains the same. The government invoked a national security, and that immediately supersedes any commercial timeline Anthropic had planned.
It absolutely does.
But here's where it gets really interesting. Because the public's reaction to this national security crisis is totally absurd. Users are literally gambling on when the tech will come back online.
Yes, the prediction markets had turned this into a total spectacle.
The Digest points out that on the prediction market, Kalshi, traders are giving it a 58% odds that Fable 5 is restored for U.S. customers by July 1st, and 74% by July 10th.
And Polymarket is even higher, I think.
Yeah, Polymarket traders are slightly more optimistic, putting it at 67% for a July 1st return. It's wild. Everyday users are treating complex, classified national security directives like they're betting on a football game.
It really speaks to the structural dependency we've developed.
Yeah.
I mean, people aren't betting on abstract foreign policy. They're betting on when they can get their core workflow infrastructure back.
Exactly.
But the true irony of this entire shutdown is what happens to the developers who can't afford to wait for a prediction market to pay out. They have applications to run today.
Which brings us to the most ironic twist in the entire digest. We have to look at the quick hit section. Because Fable 5 is offline, developers are panicking and migrating to alternative models to keep their applications running.
Yeah, they have no choice.
Can we pause on OpenRouter for a second? Because Aaron Rose points out that Chinese models, including DeepSeek, Alibaba Qwen, and Z.AI, now make up 61% of global OpenRouter developer API traffic.
It's a massive shift.
How does that migration happen so fast? How do developers just flip a switch and send 61% of global traffic to China overnight?
Well, to understand the how, you have to understand what an API aggregator like OpenRouter actually does. Think of it like a massive digital switchboard.
Okay.
Developers write code that essentially says, send my data to the smartest, most cost-effective model available on this switchboard. They aren't hard-coding loyalty to Anthropic.
They just want whatever works.
Right. So when Fable 5 suddenly goes dark and returns an error message, the switchboard automatically reroutes that query to the next best available model that fits the developer's parameters.
Wow.
Right now, models like GLM 5.2 and Kimi K2.7 are sitting there, highly capable and fully operational.
So it's an automated failover. The U.S. government issued a directive to block AI diversion to China and Russia. And the immediate unintended mechanical consequence is that it drove 61% of global API traffic directly toward Chinese servers.
Exactly. It's the law of unintended consequences playing out through software routing. By removing a major U.S. player from the board, even temporarily, the U.S. effectively handed a massive user acquisition event to foreign competitors.
That is incredible.
The demand for artificial intelligence didn't disappear because a regulator issued a letter. It just found a new, highly efficient route around the blockade.
So if you're watching this unfold from Berlin or Toronto or Seoul, you see that the U.S. government has a kill switch for the world's best tech, and the only immediate failover option is a server in Beijing. What is your move? You can't rely on either superpower. Which brings us to the third and final massive shift in today's deep dive, the rise of sovereign AI.
This is where we see the international community deciding they need their own infrastructure, built on their own soil, governed by their own laws.
The Digest covers a monumental $20 billion transatlantic merger between Canada's Cohere and Germany's Aleph Alpha.
Yeah.
But this isn't just two startups joining forces. This merger is explicitly backed by both the Canadian and German governments.
Which changes everything.
It really does, and the financing mechanism is fascinating. It includes a 500 million euro commitment in structured financing from the Schwarz Group. For context, the Schwarz Group is a massive retail conglomerate. They own the grocery chain Lidl.
Right.
Why is a grocery giant pouring €500 million into an AI merger?
Because they represent the exact type of European enterprise that's terrified of vendor lock-in. A massive logistics and retail giant like the Schwartz Group needs deeply integrated, highly secure enterprise AI to manage their supply chains.
They need stability.
Exactly. They cannot afford to build their future on an American model that might be turned off by the Commerce Department tomorrow, or a Chinese model that might violate European data privacy laws.
That makes a lot of sense.
So by providing structured financing, which is a way to inject capital while managing risk and ensuring specific strategic outcomes, they're essentially buying a guarantee that they'll have a local, compliant AI ecosystem tailored to their needs.
And this sovereign AI movement is getting its biggest stage yet at the G7 summit in Evian. Cohere CEO Aidan Gomez and Mistral AI CEO Arthur Mensch are both there, specifically representing domestic and sovereign AI initiatives.
They're front and center.
They're attending a working lunch with French President Emmanuel Macron and other political leaders. The geopolitical alliances are solidifying fast. The Digest mentions the Canada-Germany Sovereign Tech Alliance was signed earlier in 2026, which underpinned that Cohere merger.
Right.
And the EU has already set up separate AI collaboration pacts with South Korea and Brazil.
The underlying motivation here is crucial. We mentioned earlier that the U.S. export controls restricted access to Anthropic's models, and that inadvertently locked out citizens of allied G7 nations.
Yeah, totally collateral damage.
Right. The U.S. intended to secure its technology, but in doing so, it accidentally created the greatest possible proof of concept for the sovereign AI movement.
So what does this all mean? Let me try this analogy out on you. It feels exactly like a utility grid.
Okay, I like that.
You wouldn't let a foreign country control your local power grid or your water supply, so why would governments in Europe or Canada allow their digital infrastructure, which is now just as critical to their economies as electricity, to be entirely dependent on U.S. regulatory whims?
It's a huge vulnerability.
But I want to push you on this a bit because I am skeptical. Is sovereign AI actually a genuine, necessary technological shift? Or is this just classic European and Canadian trade protectionism wearing a really cool sci-fi trench coat? Like, are they just using the Anthropic shutdown as an excuse to funnel state money into their own local tech champions?
This raises an important question, and Aaron Rose tackles this exact tension in his analysis. Your power grid analogy is spot on because it highlights the vulnerability. To answer your question, it's a bit of both, but the technological vulnerability is very real.
Okay.
Rose points out that the idea of a Cohere-Aleph-Alpha merger was initially framed in white papers as a long-term strategic alternative. It was highly theoretical.
Like a someday project.
Exactly. But the recent regulatory interventions, specifically the U.S. Export Control Directive taking Fable 5 offline, acted as a massive accelerant. It took sovereign AI from a lofty protectionist talking point and turned it into an immediate operational necessity.
Because the theory just became reality.
Exactly. When Gomez, Mensch, and European leaders advocate for localized infrastructure independent of U.S. decisions at the G7, they aren't just speaking theoretically anymore.
They have proof.
Yes. They can point directly to the Anthropic shutdown and the open router traffic shift as empirical proof. The Digest actually included a quote from Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella from Monday that sums this up perfectly.
What did he say?
Referencing the Fable 5 shutdown, he warned, "A frontier without an ecosystem is not stable. When one or two companies in a single jurisdiction control the frontier of technology, the entire global ecosystem is inherently fragile."
Wow. So, to synthesize this incredible 24-hour journey we've just been on, we started with the raw financial power of private U.S. tech companies, where SpaceX can casually utilize an IPO call option to throw around $60 billion in stock, buying Cursor just to absorb their enterprise infrastructure and copper wiring. Then we saw that despite that immense corporate wealth, the U.S. government holds a trump card, freezing Anthropic out over national security concerns, a move that created a dual-track compliance nightmare and accidentally triggered an automated rerouting of global developer traffic straight to Chinese models.
The unintended consequences.
Exactly. And finally, we watched the rest of the world, Canada, Germany, France, saying enough is enough, utilizing structured financing to pour billions into sovereign AI, building their own independent tech ecosystem so they're never left in the dark again.
It is a profound structural realignment. We're moving from a unified, borderless vision of the internet to a fractured, highly regionalized reality.
And that is exactly what you need to take away from this deep dive. The cloud you use every day isn't actually floating weightless in the sky. It's made of physical metal, silicon, and fiber optic cables.
And laws.
Right. More importantly, it's tied down to very real borders, very real laws, and incredibly tense diplomatic disputes. When you run a line of code or generate a report, you are participating in this global geopolitical framework.
It really forces us to think about the long-term consequences of this fracturing. And I want to leave you with this final thought to mull over.
Go for it.
If the sovereign AI movement succeeds, if Europe, Canada, South Korea, and others all build their own localized, culturally aligned AI infrastructures, specifically to avoid US and Chinese dominance, will we lose the concept of a universal digital truth? The internet historically strove for a consensus of information. But what happens to global collaboration when asking a simple, factual question yields a fundamentally different answer, depending entirely on which side of a digital sovereign border you are standing?
That is an incredibly chilling but fascinating thought to chew on. If our artificial intelligence becomes sovereign, our digital reality might become completely sovereign too. Thank you so much for joining us as we unpacked all of this today. It's a wildly complex world out there, but we'll be right here to help you decode it one source at a time. Keep questioning the tools you use, and we will catch you on the next Deep Dive.